Welcome into the Jazz Notes podcast. I'm Ben Anderson.
I'm Chandler Holt.
It is July 2nd. I can't believe it. Free agency is open for the Utah Jazz. The NBA draft is behind us. And now we're just kind of looking forward to Summer League next week, which, Chandler, you're going to be covering because
Yes.
I'm going to be at Big 12 Media Day. So it's all on you, buddy. So good luck with that. I'll be watching. And, obviously from Vegas, I'll be doing what I can to cover it as well. But I guess we got to figure out a plan there. Not to get too behind the scenesy, but we haven't talked about it. But anyways, very fun, exciting what's been happening over the last week. And free agency has underwhelmed some Jazz fans, so we'll talk about all of that as well. And then, of course, we'll wrap up the show with your mailbag. It seems like there's some interest because we got 15-plus questions in 40 minutes, so we will address those. All right, where do you want to start, free agency or the draft?
Let's do the draft. Let's do the draft first. So the Jazz held 3 picks. We thought that there was no way that they make all 3 selections, but they did.
I'm going to stop saying that.
Yeah, right. At 10, they take Cody Williams, which we said was best case scenario, I believe, in our last episode.
You picked
Holland.
Ron Holland is the pick. I picked Nikola Topic only because Cody Williams was off the board.
Yes.
And in fact, if you go back, I think June 11th, I recorded a solo podcast, and I said if I had to bet who it was going to be Cody. Everything had said leading up to the draft he was not going to be on the board for the Jazz at 10.
And then the Pistons, who fall down to 5, worst team in the league, surprise everyone by taking Ron Holland.
Yep.
They need shooting. He is not a shooter, but who knows? Maybe it'll work out. Anyways, 29, the Jazz get maybe the steal of the draft, Isaiah Collier, and then to start the second round, another steal, Kyle Filipowski.
I had Kyle Filipowski in the top 20. I didn't do like a traditional big board. I certainly didn't publish it, but I did have one I was kind of operating off of, like who would be best player available at these situations. And I think I had Collier early 20s, and I think I had Filipowski at like 19. So I definitely expected both of those guys to go in the first. To get 2 of them within 3 picks of each other, end of day 1, beginning of day 2, I thought was a very solid work. Now, there's a reason they fell. Like, they are flawed players. Cody Williams is mostly theoretical at this point. His skill set, when you watch Colorado, like you see all the pieces, it's all got to come together, and it's got to be more consistent, but there is a reason he went 10. Like, the size is there. The versatility is there. The shooting numbers were there. There's a lot of wiggle room. Even if they drop a little bit at his height, he can still be a very good shooter. Even if he drops 5 percentage point both from the floor and from the three-point line, like he's still in the mid-40s as a shooter and 35% from three, which at his size is good enough. Yeah. Now, if he's up at 40, like he was in Colorado, he's in really good shape.
Yes.
But there's some wiggle room there. It's not like a Ron Holland or a Nikola Topic where they were 30% or below, where it's like, you got to fix it. It's like, just don't be so broken from what it was in Colorado that it doesn't translate at all. And that's a relatively safe bet to make.
But yeah, as a true freshman at a decent Colorado team last year, 11.9 points, 3 rebounds, 1.6 assists. Like you said, shot over 41% from 3. So good pick there. We were both wrong. Topic ended up going
12
to OKC.
Oklahoma City.
Yeah. And then at 29, Isaiah Collier. Also, real quick, there were rumors about the Jazz trying to trade up in the draft. Again, of course, nothing really came to fruition there. Do you think that they ended up making all 3 selections, both a combination of that and also just who was available?
I think they wanted to trade up and get Cody Williams.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think they wanted to move up to 6 or 7 to draft Cody. And when Detroit took Ron Holland, and then Tajon Salon went 6 overall to Charlotte, which, Kristen Peak, who's a local who writes for Yahoo Sports, had that really early in the day that she thought that's the direction they were going. I think the Jazz probably started to say, well, okay, if whoever goes at 5, if Tajon goes at 6, and they had an eye that Zach Edey was going to go in the top 10, which, by the way, Tim Lacombe, who's on our airwaves a lot, said if Edey was on the board at 10, the Jazz would have taken him.
Yeah.
I don't know if that means they would have taken him over Cody Williams.
Yep.
I think Cody Williams is probably higher on their board, but if they had flipped and Memphis had taken Cody, Jazz probably take Zach Edey at 10 is kind of what Tim Lacombe had hinted at. Mm-hmm. We don't know. Yeah. We will never know, but that was kind of the rumor. And then, of course, the big one was Minnesota trading up to number 8 with San Antonio and drafting out of Kentucky.
Rob Dillingham,
excuse me. That just left Cody falling.
Yep.
And basically a free fall to the Jazz. And I think ended up best case scenario, a player who, I would have had probably 5 or 6 on my board. Didn't think there's any chance he'd be there 10 for the Jazz. So good pickup there. Isaiah Collier, there's a reason he fell to 29. Like, he's flawed. He doesn't shoot the ball very well. Threw the ball all over the gym as a freshman, like bad turnovers. But USC was a joke.
Yes.
I mean, they had no shooters on the team at all. The Bronny James stuff was a distraction. You paid to get Isaiah Collier there as the number 1 recruit, and it just wasn't ever easy, and they didn't have a good team around him. Andy Enfield, the coach, is not a very good coach last year. Was good at recruiting, not good at turning them into NBA players. Now, the last guy who did that was Lorenzo Romar. He did that at Washington a whole lot, and he did get NBA players. Jaden McDaniels played there. It's like, yeah, he looked terrible in his 1 year at Washington because they got talent, but they didn't know how to use it. I think that's what you're hoping. You're hoping that you had a guy who was a super talent, just like Jaden McDaniels was, different types of players, but a super talent coming out of high school, misused in college for 1 year, and they just basically check out and say, man, I just can't wait to get to the NBA, and that's my goal. And the funny thing actually with Isaiah is he got better the second half of the season, like a lot better. Yep. He stopped turning the ball over. His efficiency numbers went way up. His last 14 games, he was like over 37% from three. Like, man, if he shoots the three at a reasonable rate, like 35%, he doesn't need to be 40% the way some guards do. Like, you're going to have Rob Dillingham be at 40 his whole life to be impactful as an NBA player. Because of Isaiah's physical gifts, if he's at 35 and his ability to get downhill and his passing ability, which is special, he's going to be awesome. But he's got to get there, and he may not ever get there.
Yeah. What do you think the odds are in, say, 3 years that the Jazz's backcourt is Collier at the 1 and Keontae at the 2?
Like 25%?
25%.
Like we don't know on Keontae yet.
Yes.
Like, there's some real bright spots with Keontae. Rookie record, or tied the rookie record for threes made. You got to shoot him efficiently, and he really didn't over the last second half of the year. And look, if Keontae can't shoot and Isaiah doesn't shoot, like, neither of them make it.
Yes, true.
So there's a chance that that's the future, and so I'm not going to try and bet like 100%.
Yeah,
that's what this team looks like. We don't know, but man, they're nice pieces to have. I mean, you have 2 top 5 recruits in back-to-back years manning your backcourt. That's a good bet. I would bet on those guys as well. That's the type of draft picks I would make. And then Kyle Filipowski was the number 4 overall recruit and goes to number 32 for the Jazz. My thing I would tell people about Kyle, just don't overthink him. Mm-hmm. He's 7 feet tall, dribble, pass, and shoot. Like, he's not a great defensive player, but he moves his feet pretty well on the perimeter, like better than Kelly Olynyk did, so he will be able to switch and hedge a little bit and just like kind of be big in front of people. The closer he gets to the rim, the worse defender he gets. He's not a good rim protector, even though he blocks a shot and a half a game. That's just because he's tall and athletic. But like, just don't overthink it. Don't try and get into like the smartest guy in the room stuff. It's like, he's 7 feet tall. He shoots the ball a little bit. He really can dribble, and he can really pass. Like, okay, I'll figure out how to use him. I'll figure out in the next 3 years, whatever this deal is he signs, I will figure out how to use him. And that's it. I don't overthink it with Cody, or excuse me, with Kyle. It's just pretty simple in my opinion.
Now we can get into free agency. The draft was definitely way more action for the Jazz than free agency, at least so far. The Jazz waived Omer Yurtseven. Chris Dunn signed a deal with the Clippers. And then the only incoming move, the Jazz signed center Drew Eubanks.
Unquestionably the funniest signing of free agency so far. Like, who and why? And like, why? What?
Yep.
Drew Eubanks? Like, he's better than Omer. So I like that.
Yep.
He's not better than Walker. But if he plays hard and Walker doesn't play hard, then he is better than Walker. So I guess that makes some sense. He's an adult. He's a try-hard guy. He's competitive. Those are all positive attributes to have. And that's really what it was. Like, he's going to be a good guy in the locker room. Yes, he got into a fight last year with Christian Stewart in Detroit. Apparently Christian Stewart punched him at the Suns game, and they didn't end up pressing charges, so that was good for him. Yeah. He's just like, I think he's probably that guy who gets under your skin, but he brings a little bit of toughness that you lose with Chris Dunn. And just a little professionalism, and has been there and is probably happy to get his first big contract. Like, his first year, we haven't seen the details yet. I bet you they're not both guaranteed. Like, I bet you it's a 1 year, $5 million guarantee with a team option for the second year. Because his career earnings to this point are like $5 million. Yeah. So he's doubling his career earnings to come and play in Utah for a year. But yeah, I thought it was just like, in retrospect, like, that's super funny. That's it's like, doesn't move the needle at all. Yeah. It's not big game hunting, which I know a lot of people were mad at. And it still is totally fine. It's still a totally fine signing. It's just like not. Yeah. It's the most almost, I don't want to say insulting, but the most like wet blanket signing. Yeah. And like, it's again, he's fine. You're talking about a fourth big. You're not talking about a guy who's expected to do a whole lot. Just, I kind of got to laugh at it last night, thinking in retrospect of what expectations Jazz fans had for Drew Eubanks to be like, what's behind door number 3 is pretty funny.
I think I saw like 5 quote tweets that just said big game hunting over the signing of Drew Eubanks. But do you think that he just sort of fills in the Yurtseven role? Because you already have Walker Kessler and you just draft Filipowski, so how do you see him fitting in?
I don't have any idea what the Jazz plans are for John Collins or Walker Kessler. Yes. Like, if Walker plays like he did last year, he's not that good. Yeah. Like, he just wasn't that impactful. And John Collins is not a long-term solution at center, I don't think. So at least it's somebody to step in and fill minutes. And again, you sign him for probably 1 year with a non-guaranteed second would be my guess. And that's fine. So Yeah, the Jazz just don't have answers right now at a lot of positions. That's the position they have the least answers at. And you know what? Again, it's one of these situations where, let's say it's $5 million with a non-guaranteed second year. That's a $5 million expiring contract, which becomes pretty tradable if you need to, just to include salaries. Or you waive him after the year and you open that spot up again, or you like him and you keep him. Like, I think those are all opportunities that you can hold on to if you're the Jazz, and he has a little bit of flexibility there that I think you can use and continue to work with. So it's not a problem. It's just like such a low-cost nothing signing.
Yeah.
That, you added some depth. You replaced Omer Yurtseven, a little bit of upside. He's still in his mid-early 20s. It's fine.
Yep. One more thing, and then we can get into the break in the mailbag. With Klay Thompson going to Dallas, and then some of these other free agency dominoes sort of falling, the Lauri Markkanen trade rumors are probably at an all-time high heat. Like they're running rampant right now in NBA discourse. One of the biggest ones I've seen is to the Golden State Warriors, with them losing Klay and not being able to get anyone else that they've had their eyes on. And again, we've talked about Lauri rumors going back into last season. It's going to take a top 20 player and things, if not a Donovan Mitchell or Rudy Gobert-esque trade package to get Lauri. What do you think about these rumors? Do you think there's any merit behind them, and what do you think the most likely scenario is?
I'm sure the Jazz are listening.
Yeah.
What I've heard, what my gathering is, there's not been any change with like Lauri and his desire to sign an extension. Like that was my thought. Was like, did Lauri say like, hey guys, I actually don't want to be here long term, and I want to be somewhere else. So let's work on this, and I'm just not going to demand a trade because you're not supposed to, and B, it would hurt his value and hurts the Jazz. What I kind of gathered in the last 24 hours talking to people is that that's not what anyone's heard. Mm-hmm. No one has heard that his desire to stay in Utah has changed. Like he wants to sign an extension and stick around, and that's kind of the plan. So the advantage there is the Jazz can just say like, oh, well, if you want to blow the doors off in a trade, great. We'll listen. But if you don't, we'll sign him and we'll have Lauri Markkanen for 5 years. Like, great. So it's a win-win for the Jazz in all honesty. You can do whatever you want. And having Lauri on your roster by itself does not limit your ability to chase Cooper Flagg next year or your ability to quote unquote go big game hunting. Like, he's in a nice spot to be able to do both. Lauri's a good player. Not good enough that you're going to win 41 games simply because he's on the roster. You maintain some flexibility there. But also, if you do add other players around him, he's a bonus to them. So that's kind of, I think, where they are on Lauri Markkanen. If it happens, I would be a little bit surprised, but anything's possible, and Danny Ainge wants this team to get better and wants to win a title.
Yes.
All right, let's take a break. We'll come back. We'll get to your mailbag. Stick around. More Jazz Notes coming up next. Welcome back to the Jazz Notes podcast. Ben Anderson, Chandler Holt. Okay, as always, I didn't say this at the beginning of the show. Find us on Twitter, at KSL Sports, X, Threads, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, wherever. But also find Chandler at Chandler Holt KSL. Find me on Twitter at Ben's Hoops. Every Tuesday I send out this prompt. Reply to the text, or tweet, I should say, and you can get your question answered on the mailbag. All right, what do we have today?
Good amount of questions.
Anyone
today.
Ask about Lauri?
Yes,
a couple people.
Yes. Two questions that are pretty similar here from Cal VJ and Tyler Galt. If the roster stays as is, what would you predict the over/under for the Jazz win total being?
Again, so much of it is dictated by how many games in the West are you going to beat the other teams. Now, the Jazz were on a 41-win pace through 52 games this last year before the trade deadline when they traded Kelly and traded Simone Fontecchio. And then the year before that, they were like 35-36. So like the last 10 games of the season, they really pulled the e-brake and slammed, lost all these games late to get a top 10 pick. So they have shown an ability to win at basically a 500 rate, but that's way too high, and the West is stacked. And like even San Antonio got better adding Chris Paul.
Yep.
So let's say you win 35% of your games in the West and 40% of your games you're in the East against the East. Like, you're still looking at 35 wins.
Yep.
I think would be like the over-under I would set, just based on the chance that there's some fluctuation and, does one of the rookies jumps up, like is Keontae, does he break through and is really good? Or does Colin Sexton continue to play really well like he did to close the season and Lauri stays healthy? Or does Lauri only play 60 games? Now some of that's because the Jazz wanted to lose late. They didn't let him play. So I think that is in there. So I'd say like 35.
Yes, I think that's good. If I'm not incorrect, 2 years ago, the first year of the rebuild, they went 37-45, and then last year they were a little bit worse
Were they
than
31?
That. Yeah. So I was going to say around 35.
Yeah, they were 26-26. I think they only won 5 games after the trade deadline. So again, it's so hard to set that because they can mess with the system and tank games on purpose and try and get Ace Bailey or Cooper Flagg or whoever these kids that are coming out next year.
Next question from Christian. If the Jazz trade all of their veterans besides Lauri and really play our young guys, could we be bad enough to get a top pick? In my mind, that would be a win-win-win.
I don't know if John Collins or Jordan Clarkson really change how many games you win.
Yeah.
In all honesty. I mean, they probably do a little bit over, like if you were to just give Isaiah Collier all the minutes, Jordan Clarkson will win you more games next year than Isaiah Collier. So maybe that's 3 or 4 wins in the season. But I think we overrate how many wins individual players are worth. Every team wins 20 games. Every team loses 20 games. Like every season.
Yep.
What do you do in the other 40? And it's like, okay, the margins are really thin there. Like, is Jordan Clarkson going to win you 4 games of those other 40? Probably not. So that's the hard part. I don't actually think that changes all that much. The difference, the one player I'd say is a major difference maker is Colin Sexton.
Yeah.
Like, Colin is really good. Colin has a chance to break through this year, and I don't know why he's fallen through the cracks so much other than he's just like kind of operates on a different rhythm than a lot of people, but he does not get talked about as like a future. What is he? I'll pull it up. He's got to be 25 years old. Like, Colin Sexton's not 40. Yeah. I don't know. He's 25.
Yeah.
And he just turned 25 in January. Like, Colin is 2 years away from entering his prime. He's got elite physical tools. His last 50 games of the season, I know I've said this a lot, averaged 20 points, 5 assists, like shot 50, 40, 85. Like, it was awesome. Colin's awesome.
Yeah.
And if you think like, oh man, this dude's breaking through and is going to break through in a real way of like how to win, well, then you pair him with Lauri and you're close. Like, you're one guy away from having a quote unquote big 3. That's why I wouldn't be so quick to just like pull the plug on Lauri and be like, yeah, break it down. It's like, well, what are you going to do about Colin, who's really close to being really good and is already good? And maybe he's already there. Like, maybe he's just kind of gotten muddied with some of the young players that they have, but you find a complementary piece next to him in Keontae or whatever, and those are the complementary pieces, and you let Colin break out, and now you've really got something.
Yes.
So I think that's one of the weird, least talked about points of the Jazz right now is how good Colin has turned into and that he could really be a staple in their future.
Yeah, I love Colin Sexton. I think that there's no question about his talent and what he brings, especially with his effort and on the defensive end as well. But my only question for him is, I know that he can contribute, but can he contribute on a winning team? And I'm not saying that he can't do that. He just hasn't really had that option. He hasn't had that option yet in his young career. So yeah, I think that he has a lot of talent, but can he sort of put it together on a winning team?
Yep, big question.
Next from Jay Christian, I want Ben's mock trades for Lauri. What teams could come with strong offers? Make them as unbiased as possible. You wrote an article about this the other day.
Yeah, I didn't put specific trades, but I put the teams and like kind of the pieces they could offer. So if you go to KSLSports.com or my Twitter, Ben's Hoops, you will find it. The 3 teams I listed that I thought kind of have the pieces to make a deal work are the Warriors, are the Spurs, and are the Houston Rockets, which are 3 teams we've talked about quite a bit. And then the one team I had also threw in there, Hoops Hype reported it today, and I have heard that they had called on Lauri last season. I don't know how serious those calls were, but sometimes things get revisited. That's why you make all the calls. You always just check in on stuff. Is that New Orleans had called on Lauri last year, and might be Hoops Hypes is saying that they might be back in on it, trying to trade Brandon Ingram, etc. But let's start just with the 4 teams. We'll go quickly through this. Warriors, I would want Jonathan Kuminga, and it's kind of a non-starter if I don't get Jonathan Kuminga because they don't have the draft capital. They can only outright trade 2 of their first-round picks, 2025 and either 27 or 28, because they've already traded 2030, and you can't trade picks on either side of that because you can't trade back-to-back years. So they really only have 2 picks to trade, though they could do swaps, et cetera, et cetera. But from them, I would ask for Jonathan Kuminga and Brandon Pajemski and 2 first-round picks. Like, this is Lauri Markkanen. Like, he's a borderline All-NBA player. Jonathan Kuminga's good. You're right. Is he good enough to be the face of your franchise? Like, you're trying to win a title with Steph before it's all over, and Lauri gets you a lot closer than Jonathan Kuminga probably does last year. And the Jazz can't just keep taking picks. Like, they need players. They need talent. So that's what I would ask for. And if they wouldn't offer it, I would just say no. Like, I would just hang up the phone. Here's the thing about Lauri. Sign him. Fine, extend him, sign him. He's not losing value. Yeah. Every team in the NBA still wants him. Every team still wanted Mikal Bridges after he left the Suns. Like, he could have signed a $35 million deal and everyone still would have wanted him. So Lauri's nowhere close to losing value as a player the way like a Kevin Durant is.
Yes.
So that's what I would look at. Brandon Pajemski and Moses Moody wouldn't do it. I would want Kuminga. San Antonio. I want all the Atlanta picks that they have because Atlanta's about to be a disaster. Mm-hmm. I would want at least the San Antonio pick or maybe that future Minnesota Timberwolves pick that they traded for. And I would ask for Steph Castle. It's like, Guys, you're getting Lauri Markkanen back.
Yeah.
Like an already all-star, and you won't give up the number 4 pick, Steph Castle, in a flat draft that number 4 might not be any better than 10. Like, you have to include Steph Castle.
Yes.
At least 4 draft picks, because you're getting a player who's going to fit perfectly with Victor Wembanyama for the next decade and keep you guys in contention for like 6 or 7 years.
Yep.
So I need Steph Castle back. I need... If you're not including Devin, it's either got to be Devin Vassell or Steph Castle.
Yeah.
So one of those 2 guys and 4 picks. And then what? Keldon Johnson or whatever salary you have to match. Like, that's what I have to get back. And then Houston, again, 4 picks. And I would ask for Reed Shepherd, who was just the number 3 overall pick. Or Alperen Şengün and like 3 picks, probably. Again, and Alperen's really good. That would be the name I would circle, the best player coming back to the Jazz potentially. Alperen Şengün and 3 picks, something in that structure.
Yes.
You have to take like Jock Landale back to make the salaries work, but okay, Jock Landale, you're fine. You're not going to play.
Do you think that they would be more likely to do like Reed Shepherd and Jabari Smith instead of Şengün in a trade like that?
And I would listen.
Yeah.
Like, I would listen to that.
Yeah.
If the draft capital matched up. I would probably need fewer picks with Alperen Şengün, but yeah, Jabari Smith, the former number 3 overall pick, this year's number 3 overall pick in Reed, and 3 draft picks.
Yeah.
Like, they're not trading Amen Thompson, so I wouldn't even talk about that. Asar? Amen. I can't remember now.
I think Asar is the Pistons.
The Pistons, that's right. Yeah,
Yeah.
Amen Thompson's in Houston. So he's not going to get traded.
Yeah.
I think they like him too much. And the news came out today that they're not going to extend or sign rookie extensions for either Jalen Green or Alperen. I would ask for Alperen over Jalen Green. I'm not sure I buy into that yet.
Yeah. And then Pelicans would be Brandon Ingram and picks, presumably?
No, I don't want Brandon Ingram. I want Herb Jones and I want Trey Murphy.
Okay. Honestly, I think I would definitely like that more than Brandon Ingram.
Yeah, no, I'm not that interested in Brandon Ingram. For Lauri.
Yes.
Like, that doesn't do anything for me. If I'm pairing Lauri on like a real easy, like if the Jazz are trading 1 pick for Brandon Ingram and like just salary, bad salary, I would do it.
Yeah.
I don't want Lauri for Brandon Ingram. That doesn't interest me at all, even though I know that's what they would offer. No, I want Herb Jones and I want Trey Murphy the third. And I'm like, those guys aren't all-stars. They've never been all-stars. They're mostly catch and shoot, 3-and-D guys. Like, they're not really ball in hand guys, which is what Lauri is, but Lauri's way better at it.
Yep.
So, again, I don't have to trade Lauri. So if that's your offer, is Brandon Ingram, there's 3 other offers.
Yes.
Like, that's the thing. There's a robust market for Lauri Markkanen right now. So I would ask for this guy.
Of those 4, which one would you like the most from the Jazz perspective?
I think Şengün has the best chance to be an all-star.
Okay.
So I would focus on that. And then I'd probably go Jonathan Kuminga and the Warriors and then try and short the Warriors on their future picks. So I'd go Rockets, Warriors, because I like the player coming back that's already a little bit proven in Kuminga. Rockets. Rockets were 1, Warriors 2, Spurs 3. That's what I'm looking for.
Yep.
Because I would require Castle or Devin Vassell, who are, again, players.
Yes.
And then probably Pelicans 4, just because I don't know if either Trey Murphy or Herb Jones become like face of the franchise guys.
Yes.
Then you're betting on the guys you already have in your roster become face of the franchise.
Yes, exactly. Because those guys are more, I feel like, role players that could be role players on a contending team.
Yep.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. I hope that satisfied people.
Next up from
Again,
Denny.
I haven't heard any of those trades being out there. That's
Yes.
just kind of the rumored teams and what I would look for, what they have to offer.
Next up from Denny B. Karchner. How much did the Jazz value Walker, i.e. see him as part of the future?
I have heard that they like that they control his future.
Okay.
So I'm going to not get in trouble
Yeah.
by saying a lot of things. And not that pretending that like I have some like super insight of like what their plans are for him. The Jazz are happy to control his future and are happy if he's here and like are not building a team for Walker Kessler. Obviously, nobody would do that, but like they're happy to have Walker Kessler under team control for the next however many years. If that, he's got to play harder. Like, he's got to play better. He was a real disappointment last year, and it was kind of on him. Like, I totally get it. Started the first 7 games, got hurt, he came back, his job was gone. I would be bummed too. I'd be really frustrated with that. Everyone would. But, like, okay, so earn it back, because there were jobs to be earned. You could have taken that back, and, like, I get it that the team is built really poorly, and he and John Collins don't fit well together at all, and it was apparent that they weren't prepared culturally or whatever to put John Collins on the bench at that point, or whether they're trying to keep his trade value up. I don't know. But, like, Walker didn't be like, you're mad at me? You don't think I'm good enough? Watch this. I'm going to dominate off the bench. He did the other thing.
Yeah.
He did the opposite direction of, like, some games I'm going to get 2 rebounds. Some days I'm not going to play hard. It's just like, okay, young guy, step up.
Another one from Denny. Of all the 7 young players, including Walker, who do you have the most confidence will hit?
Taylor Hendricks.
Okay.
Look, he's 6'9". He shot 37% from 3 last year.
Yeah.
What are you waiting for? He's a good shot blocker. I think he's got, at worst case scenario, he's a really good help side defensive player, whether he ever becomes elite on ball or not. And I'm going to say young. I'm going to take Colin Sexton out of this conversation, so he doesn't count there. We're talking about Bryce Sensabaugh, Keontae George, Taylor Hendricks, now Cody Williams, Isaiah Collier, and Kyle Filipowski. Did he say 7? I don't know.
He
who
said
the
including Walker.
Oh, including Walker.
Yes.
Yeah. Give me Taylor.
Yeah.
There's just a lot of those guys who make it in the NBA. That's just a really good. Robert Covington's been in the NBA for a long time.
Yes.
So all-star, I probably wouldn't pick Taylor Hendricks because I think it's hard to make an all-star at that position.
Yes.
But yeah, man, he did it in college, and he was a number 9 overall pick for a reason. He shot 38% from 3. Last year, in a pretty mediocre year, I thought, for a top 10 pick, he averaged 7 and 4 and shot 45% from the floor and 38% from 3 and 80% from the free throw line. The shooting is real.
Yep.
There's no doubt that the shooting is real, and it's only going to get better. And then does he ever do anything with the ball in his hands? And even if he doesn't, again, he's a super valuable 6'9", 3-and-D player.
Yes.
So that's a hit. You kind of already hit on Taylor, and I'd expect that to continue. And he's a good kid.
Yeah.
He's a really nice kid, nice person that I don't think is going to screw that up.
And it's an interesting question because Taylor Hendricks hitting and Keontae George hitting would look totally different both ways, right? Taylor Hendricks, best case scenario, he's a 2-way off-ball monster.
Yeah,
and
right.
And then Keontae George, he's a off guard who can score on all 3 levels and be super efficient.
Yeah, he's Devin Booker.
Yeah, exactly.
Or Jamal Murray.
But yeah, honestly, I agree with you. I think that Taylor Hendricks has more to fall back on, more of a foundation, which makes it easier for him to be a hit, quote unquote.
Yeah, and then of these guys, I would bet Cody Williams, Isaiah Collier, Kyle Filipowski in that order.
Yeah.
The tools are just so much better for Cody. Isaiah's probably not as far behind, though. I remember when the Jazz, I did the lottery show on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone, and my first thought was, well, you got to start watching Isaiah Collier now. I'd watched some of these other guys getting previewed for it, and then immediately changed to, there's a real chance that Isaiah Collier's the guy at 10,
yeah,
and he fell to 29. So.
Let's go back to some Lauri talk for another question from J. James Fan Club. What would you value most in a Lauri trade, prospects or picks? If prospects, who would be some of your favorite options? If picks, quantity or quality? For prospects, already named a few from the team.
Yeah, that's what I would. It would be prospects. I would still want more draft capital. I'm still shorting teams on their future, and I want to continue to have those. We've had a running Jazz draft tracker and the picks they have. They still have as many as 14 first-round picks between now and 2031. If you get that up to 16 or 17, eventually time runs out on Oklahoma City's ability to have these picks. They traded 5 second-round picks for Dylan Jones. That's actually kind of bad marketing. They didn't play the market very well. That's a lot of picks to trade up to get Dylan Jones, who might have been available in the second round anyways.
Yes.
And I'm excited to see him. He's going to make his debut here next week with Oklahoma City Thunder. But I don't love that value. So if you can have picks in the future and have times to trade them and move them, you just don't want them to all come at you so quickly that the market doesn't generate an ability to trade them for real value. And I think OKC has run into that a little bit. So give me players. I want some players that can play. You got to have faces of the franchise. At some point, the rubber's got to meet the road. And Kuminga, Şengün, Herb Jones, Trey Murphy, Brandon Pajemski, that's what I want over unknown picks.
Yes. Next up from Tony Anderson, if you had to bet money on whether any player on the current Jazz roster, excluding Lauri, would make at least one All-NBA team in the future, which way would you place your bet? New rookies included.
Colin Sexton. Because if he averages 20 points and 5 assists, he's already really close.
Yes.
And if randomly one year that jumps up to 25 points and 5 assists, then he's an all-star.
Yep.
He's a lot closer than people think. Again, it's this thing I get the idea of you got to choose a direction. It's well, the direction might choose itself if Colin keeps playing that well. And if Colin's that good and can do it next to Lauri, again, Jazz from December 15th to February 3rd or whatever it was, 15-3 or something crazy, 15-4.
Yeah.
Again, it was a hot stretch. You're reading into a 20-game stretch, and you can't do that too much. But that's because you were healthy and you had your young players and you had your 2 stars on the floor ready to go. What if you retool around those guys, or Taylor Hendricks breaks out, or Cody hits, or you do end up with a Devin Booker or Jamal Murray type player in Keontae. It's oh man, it's nice to have your starting point guard already in Colin Sexton and Lauri Markkanen, a all-star power forward or forward, whatever you want to call him. Okay, now you're set, and now you have all these picks, and now you have all these young players, and you're really glad you didn't give up on Keontae George or Lauri Markkanen or Colin Sexton or whoever it is. So I think there's a lot of value there.
Next up from T-First, if they trade Lauri, does that make it more likely that they'll trade all the vets, including Colin Sexton? At that point, would they go even further and take on bad contracts for assets to meet the minimum required salary, i.e. Zach LaVine and Lonzo Ball?
I don't think they would take on Lonzo Ball or Zach LaVine. They'd really have to get a lot of assets back. I don't think they want to reset that far.
Yes.
So yesterday I tweeted out, and I know it got some traffic, was the second half of the big game hunting quote from Danny Ainge. And he laid out an interesting thing. He said, we're going to try and go big game hunting and really do everything we can to help this team win up to July. And then if nothing happens, we'll change course or reassess our options until the next time there's the opportunity to build a team. I don't necessarily think that means punting everything. But another part of that Danny Ainge had said, you can go back and read the article, just Google search big game hunting KSL Sports. Like, it'll pull up other than maybe Adam Eagles' hunting show that he does here for KSL. But Danny also said, like, the problem with totally like hitting the reset button is you're 3 or 4 years out now. Like, Danny has said that and doesn't want to do it. He doesn't want to be 4 years out. Danny wants to, he does want to win.
Yep.
I know that people don't believe that. Like, he wants to have a product to win. I remember one time I was at training camp for the Jazz, like the preseason, and it just kind of like caught Danny coming out. I was like, is this fun? He's like, no. He's like, I just want to get to the games. Like, Danny wants the games.
Yep.
Danny does, as much as we're like, well, this is his area, Danny likes the games. He likes the regular season. He wants to see the things going on the court. And this is part of the job, but he wants to see what's happening. He wants to see if the players can win games. And that's what he wants to get to.
Next one, another one from T-First. Will they be sending any of the young guys to the G League like last year?
Yes.
All of them. All of them. Yes.
Yep. All of them will play there.
What about the 3 rookies from last year? Do you see Bryce Sensabaugh?
Bryce, yes.
Yes, okay.
I bet Taylor no. I bet Taylor's starting.
Okay.
I bet Taylor starts. That's kind of one of my hot takes. I would bet it's like Colin, Keontae, Taylor, Lauri, John, or Walker, or whatever. But something like that. Yeah, I bet Taylor starts. Again, Taylor's good, man. Like, I think Taylor can actually play. And, sounds like there's been some rumors that he's had an okay summer. We'll see. We will know from Summer League how he looks.
Next up from Jimbo Slice. How long before Cody Williams demands a trade? How many picks could we get if we traded him today? Also, if we have a total of 20 picks, can we turn them into the league and get a championship?
That's not how it works.
No.
I will also say this because I think the narrative overtakes reality sometimes, which is like, who was the last player who asked for a trade? Like Enes Kanter?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, he did.
Yeah.
Donovan never did. Darren basically set up that he was going to leave when he signed a 3-year deal. But Donovan didn't ask for a trade. Rudy didn't ask for a trade. Like, these guys aren't asking to be moved. The Jazz have chosen to move them.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't bet on these players asking to be moved.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And again, as we're learning, like, it's really hard to turn down contract extensions with the modern NBA. Like, Donovan even signed a contract extension in Cleveland when nobody thought that would be possible.
Yeah.
So I don't think anyone's demanding to be traded. I get the joke of, like, are the Jazz just always going to stay in this limbo of never winning?
Yeah.
I get why it feels that way. I also, man, like, I grew up in Utah, full transparency. Like, I remember the Andre Karolinko teams rebuilding after John and Carl. I remember the Darren Williams, Carlos Boozer teams rebuilding after that failed. I remember the Donovan Mitchell, Rudy Gobert teams rebuilding after the Trey Burke stuff failed. Like, this is how it works. This is always how it's worked. And I know some people do remember that, but I also know some people probably became fans because, like, Donovan Mitchell was awesome as a rookie, and they're like, this exciting product, I didn't know this is what the Jazz offered, and it was exciting, and now they're experiencing this for the first time, and they're like, how do you ever get out of this? It's like, oh, they always do, and there will always be another iteration of 2 guys. They just got to find the 2 guys. And maybe it's Colin Sexton and Lauri Markkanen, and they just haven't had enough time to turn into those players, or maybe it's guys who aren't even on the roster yet. But this is the natural cycle.
Last question here from TJ. Will Jazz fans ever get to be happy? I just want one parade. I have something for this. Think about, first of all, I think there's like 5 or 6 NBA franchises that have never won a title.
Yeah.
Second, I could probably name 5 teams right now that are in way worse situations than the Jazz are in. The Brooklyn Nets.
Yeah.
Granted, they just got a pretty good return from Mikal Bridges, got some of their picks back, so it's looking a little bit better, but still not a lot of bright spots there for Brooklyn. And then even like Phoenix.
Yeah.
Like, it's smoke and mirrors in Phoenix, right? Oh, we have Kevin Durant and Devin Booker. We're going to win a lot of games this year, but you're not going to win a championship. You know, it's probably going to be another second round exit or something along those lines. And then you're going into, after this era ends, maybe one of the worst eras of Suns basketball that there ever will be.
Yeah.
Nothing to look forward to.
No
No
picks.
picks.
Yeah.
No stars.
Yeah.
So yeah, at least the Jazz have the ability to trend in the right direction if they're not heading for it right now.
There are 29 teams, and I'll take the Knicks out of this conversation because I like what the Knicks are doing, but like other than the Celtics who just won a title and have all their players coming back next year, like I could lay out true dread for every team in the NBA.
Yes.
Like Denver won the title 2 years ago. They've had nothing but veterans want to leave the franchise. Now you're overpaying Michael Porter Jr. You're going to anger your 3-time MVP and Nikola Jokic because you keep losing players that help him win. And he's like, dude, I won one title and now we've completely fallen apart and you keep trying to replace him with rookies? Like, I'm furious about it. Oh, and now we don't have any cap space or draft picks to fix this? Like, what are you doing? Like, there's real dread there of like, this is only going to slowly get worse.
Yes.
And you're going to waste the rest of Nikola Jokic's career until he demands a trade. Like, that's really a possibility in Denver. And they won a title 13 months ago, you know? Like, you can lay out a lot of disastrous situations. You just, I get why Jazz fans want to get back to the fun part of like the hope, the upswing. And they just haven't seen it yet in the last 2 years, have not been hopeful upswings really at any point.
Yes, but also like one more team, Detroit. They've been in a rebuild for 20 years, it feels like. 5 years definitely without any new positives really coming to town. Cade Cunningham is good, but he hasn't been the number 1 overall pick All-NBA player that can lead you to the playoffs.
Yeah. I like Ron Holland. I can't think of a worse team to draft him than the Detroit Pistons. Like they should have just taken Donovan Clingan. They didn't. We'll see. Maybe they're wrong. Or maybe they're right. Maybe I'm totally wrong. But yeah, every team has dread.
Yes.
Minnesota can look at, man, they just drafted Mike Conley's replacement already. Like that's how much they're thinking about like, oh man, this could go bad quick. And now you're betting on Rob Dillingham, who's 6 feet tall, to replace Mike Conley. And Mike Conley's 6 feet tall, but Mike Conley is one of the better point guards of his generation.
Yes.
And now you're betting on Rob Dillingham to do that. And if it doesn't work and they get old and bad, Anthony Edwards is going to stay there and be happy the rest of his life. He's not going to. Like there's always dread.
Yes.
You could be the Lakers fan. You could be the Warriors just said goodbye to one of the favorites of all time in Klay Thompson. It can go bad quickly. And it can get good quickly. And that's where the Jazz are trying to position themselves for.
Thank you guys for tuning into the Jazz Notes podcast. That was a quick free agency and draft update episode. Next week, Summer League will be going on, and we will keep you updated as we go through the NBA offseason.
Yeah, I guess there might not be a podcast next week.
Okay, yes.
Because I will be at Big 12 Media Day, so there probably won't be a podcast. So apologies for that. We will reconvene the week after and talk about what has happened, and then they'll be in the middle of Vegas as well. So stay tuned for that. Probably taking a hiatus next week. 2 weeks from now, Jazz Notes will be back. Thanks for tuning in. Find him on Twitter, Chandler Holt KSL. Read us at KSLSports.com. Find me on Twitter at Ben's Hoops, and we'll be back with you in a few weeks.